IVM. Welcome to another episode of This Round is on Me. My guest today is a senior journalist and columnist with the Times of India, Plus, and First Post. She was most recently editor of trends at Mumbai Mirror newspaper and also wrote a column titled Let Them Eat Cake for the same paper, which now continues at the TOI Plus. She was previously senior editor at the Indian Express, where she also had a column for 12 years. Actually, I'm being way too formal. She's basically responsible for breaking most of the juiciest stories, from revealing the Ambani Science engagement a year before they announced it, to knowing about every Bollywood affair and hookup before even the spouse probably does. She's literally the last word in celebrity journalism in India. She also has her finger on the pulse of every fashion trend and designer. For those of you who live in Bombay and, like me, couldn't start your day without page 2 of the Mumbai Mirror, you have my guest today, Namrata Zakaria, to thank. Welcome to the show, Namrata.
I just want to hide after this introduction.
No, you can't. You can't. I have to tell you, one of the things I dreaded most in my life was waking up to read my own name in your diary page. You have brought the fear of diary into most of us. So tell us that as the gatekeeper and author of Mumbai's most read celebrity news page, you were equally the most hated and sought after person in the city. How did you sleep at night?
I slept very peacefully, very exhaustedly, often with a glass of a small glass of gin to assist me after the 12-hour drudgery of investigating whatever I could do. But I can't really take credit for Mumbai Mirror's page 2, because honestly it was a team effort entirely. It's impossible for one person to have that sort of expansive I'm even in-depth knowledge about so many people across all sorts of fields. So really, it was a team job, and I think that's why it was so varied and sparkling.
And your team included sources all over and spies all over the city. So, but come on, you're friends with so many people you've written about. Have you ever held a story back because it's about a friend? Come on, you have to be honest.
The thing is that I only owe my honesty to the reader, right? Like any good journalist should do, right? That's your first sort of that's the only parameter that you should sort of follow. And most importantly, I may be writing about society and cultures and manners, but I'm not really here to make friends. I like being, a little bit of a fly on the wall, observing people's, mannerisms, their shoes, their, what they're wearing, how they speak, all of that. I really get off on that. So, that was a big thrill for me. I want to leave, can leave. But, I think every girl needs a little bit of her inner circle of 3 friends or 5 friends. And if they're okay, you're okay.
Fair. But I know how, we've talked about it in the past where you're like, I'm at my deadline and I don't have any stories. And you always sort of bugging me for restaurant gossip, which I would I would feed you very discreetly or in very small doses. So I know how hard it was for you.
You were hardly
I know.
If I came to your restaurant and spent a lot of money every day, it wouldn't crack you.
No. I know that, it was really hard for you, and I'm not someone who feeds and tells. So yes, it was hard to get things from me. But, have you ever got your sources in trouble? That was one of the reasons I would never say anything, because I was always scared that I'd get caught out. And, have you ever got your sources in trouble because it's obvious who's told you what?
It's never happened. And the thing is, I have very few but very good sources. One doesn't know who the other one is. And because of the nature of the beast that I was dealing with, they had to be people like I could really trust, their word, simply because Mirror was, just such a giant paper, and the kind of news that we broke was of such, it was epically disturbing, often, sometimes. But so yeah, my sources had to be, so to speak, rock solid. And the thing is that, I mean, often, 9 out of 10 news items would come in as a denial. People can lie. Celebrities lie all the time. It's their right to lie and control their own narrative. But a newspaper cannot afford to lie. It cannot afford to get anything wrong. At least that was what our attempt is, especially, in a time like right now, where the credibility of the media is getting such a big blow, not just by the government, but also by other media and social media, and everyone loves to hate the press, right? So, getting something minorly wrong would, we would really, we'd really have a big price to pay for that, and we couldn't afford to do that. So for example, if there was something really controversial or scandalous, I had to make sure that my source could back it up thoroughly and properly, either with photograph or more details, or whatever I could get. And also we were very careful in not doing just loose news. We didn't do sort of the low-hanging fruit. If somebody's, for example,
having an affair.
I mean, if you want to talk about an affair, so for example, if we wrote about Harish Salve and his wife of several years, I think of 30 years, that they were in trouble and he had moved to the UK. I mean, you can't mess around with Harish Salve, right? I mean, he's, he's buddies with the Chief Justice of India. He's the lawyer, in the Supreme Court. And I mean, even if it wasn't him, so, it's my job to cross-check with him, pose a question, do as much fact-checking as possible. So our gatekeeping was so severe. It wasn't really just about filling the page. It really was about getting the best news, staying away from, the easy, low-hanging stuff, and giving people something to talk about every day. And the thing with celebrity journalism is, everyone knows everybody, and how, but, you may be famous for 30 years. This sort of opacity, in the lives of the elite, which the common man doesn't get to see. So, what we know of our celebrities, whether it's the movie stars or it's, the industrialists, we know what they want us to know, right? Even the corporate world, and everyone who sort of does, celebrity journalism or people journalism, as it were, they do it in a very controlled manner, as if it's like, almost laudatory or, promotional. And I think Mirror really wanted to, prick that bubble just minorly if it could, So yeah, it was enjoyable.
But tell me, I mean, I know we've talked about this in the past where I've loosely referred to it as like a gossip column. And, you've corrected me on that and said that it's not just about gossip and it's not intended to be salacious. And why is it that, why do you feel that, firstly, it's not intended to be voyeuristic, but that you felt that there was a responsibility, when it comes to celebrities, and it comes with the territory of being a celebrity? I mean, is that how you kind of approach this?
So, Gauri, I met Mr. Chidambaram at a private party a few years ago, and I was introduced to him by the hostess of the party, who was a friend of mine. And she said, Mr. Chidambaram, this is Namrata. She's the girl you need to know in Bombay. And of course, he knew me because we had met at his book launch once a couple of years before that. And she has all the gossip. And I was like, Mr. Chidambaram, she's just being mean to me. I mean, I don't do.
That is what people think. I mean, come on, that is what people think. Like, it before everybody else does, and everyone's like, God, Nams, give me the gossip. So it is that. So that is how it's perceived.
So what I told him is that Mr. Chidambaram, I don't do gossip. It's called social anthropology. He laughed for 10 minutes. And of course, he spent the evening listening to me gab on. I mean, one man's gossip is another man's news, right? And I mean, I don't really think we were salacious. We definitely did not intend to be salacious. We just wanted to give people, a window that they did not have, a window to other people that they did not have, access to. We just wanted to have that little bit, of the door open, sort of pull back a curtain, give your, behind the scenes sort of view on our heroes, so to speak. But
Yeah, I mean,
we were very responsible, and the instructions were very clear. I mean, I'm sure Gauri, that I didn't start page 2. I didn't start the diary page. I inherited it. It existed much before I joined Mirror, and I was very sure that when I would leave, somebody else would do it, and I'm sure would do a great job as well. So, we really did not write about people's affairs. I really don't think we could get away with that. Simply because it's highly defamatory, right? So unless somebody had filed for divorce or was open about, their marriage breaking up, and I mean, this is not your average neighbor, right? Like, these are massive public figures, even industrialist families where, a marriage is more of a business merger than, hanging out at some Ivy League canteen or what have you. So we wouldn't write about any marriage breaking unless one of the two parties had confirmed to us and were okay with it, or, or if there was a divorce petition filed and we knew it had happened. We didn't write about children or children's custodies or any of that. We didn't out anyone, who was gay. And if somebody, announced themselves to be gay, we were very celebratory in that. So we were quite respectful of our boundaries, for sure.
Well, you had your blind items in the tail piece, which were harder than solving the New York Times crossword puzzle. So, I mean, it really is an art, and it's, it's something that everyone loved to hate, frankly, and that's quite an achievement in a way.
Yeah, we pretty much got away with murder in that blind item, so to speak. And maybe that sort of superseded the popularity of the whole page or the whole paper, because, it really was like giving fodder to the masses, just... it was such a...
It wasn't even the masses. It was literally, it was everyone. I mean, me as a restaurateur, I got half my news about what was happening in the restaurant industry from the diary page. It was literally like that. It really was a newsmaker, newsbreaker, and that comes with a lot of responsibility, But I think that it really is a skill, and there's a lot of nuance in how you report celebrity journalism. And in fact, you were on Bad Boy Billionaires as well. I think on the Nirav Modi episode, is that right?
That's right.
As a commentator on celebrity lifestyle. And I guess, doing this page and having this insight into the celebrity world really gave you a completely different sort of point of view on how, without being shocked all the time about everything that was happening around you. It really is an art, celebrity journalism. So, tell us more about this, that, how do you keep it sort of relevant and not just this vapid gossip?
So the Nirav Modi phone call actually came. The producers called my editor, Meenal Paghel, and they wanted... so I had done 4, I think they were all page 1 stories on Nirav Modi when, the scandal erupted, not just at the time, but even just a few months before, because he had gone and he had bought over Rhythm House, and multiple stories we had done on him. So when my editor got a call from, it was a UK-based production house, and obviously she just, asked them to speak to me, and they did tell me it was a documentary, and they shot with me, asked all sorts of very tangible questions. And because I had the insight, because I had met him, I had not worked with him, but I had worked with people around him, and I had been writing about him rather openly. I mean, I could speak with great authority on it. And of course, everything that they did was so thoroughly checked with a fine tooth comb, simply because it was so libelous, right? Like one of those 4 episodes has still not dropped on Netflix because, of the multiple litigations that India's glorious courts offer us, right? So yeah, that was the Nirav Modi story. What was your second question?
No, I was just saying that, when it comes to, again, going back to the diary page, how do you sort of keep it interesting and not just, how would you filter the information that you were probably being fed sort of from all sides, and actually kind of gatekeep that paper and decide what goes in there and what doesn't?
I mean, we turned a lot.
I mean, it didn't become like a press release kind of page, right? Which is what a lot of celebrity pages are today. And it really, I mean, I'm trying to kind of understand the art of doing it, because it really is, it's something that it was factual information. So you almost, I mean, I know, like, for example, I remember when you wrote about, our chef leaving, or when we closed our second down, and it really is about that I kind of wanted to control the narrative. And I mean, of course, the information was out there, but it sort of it always, it still hits you when you read about it, right? And it's not just a celebratory sort of piece that you're normally used to seeing as a restaurateur, and something that's lauding your work. And I think it really hits you, but at the same time, there was nothing to deny about it. But I remember we talked about it, and I said that, oh, could it have been written more kindly, or could it have been, did it have to come across in a slightly sort of tongue-in-cheek way, or a little, and so I'm just trying to kind of get into the art of writing that way. How do you decide how to kind of attack a subject?
Do we attack a subject? I would not use the word attack. I would use unravel, decode, prioritize sort of the highlightable news. I don't know how we did it. Like I said, we really had, a massive team that had, specialized in their sort of domains. I'm a Bombay girl, and I've been a journalist for 20 years. So 15 years while, when I joined the Mirror. So I had, a great network of people. I also have a little secret, which is my bullshit radar. I think I have the best bullshit radar in this country. So it's very easy to, spot the bullshit. Like, for example, there was this, and we took her name in the paper, and I'm not going to take it right now. So we had this Bollywood performer whose team sent me pictures of her at a Fendi fashion show, and with Karl Lagerfeld, and he apparently gifted her this fur jacket, and she just wanted the news that she was buddies with him, and he gave her this expensive present. And we sat on it, and we got in touch with the Fendi's communications team in India. And they got in touch just to, sort of fact check and verify whether the news was right, or, it was a plant, because there were so many plants. And they got in touch with Fendi in Italy, and they took, I don't know, maybe 24 or 48 hours to revert. And they came back saying they had no idea who she was, So normally we would just drop the story. But I think we were in a...
Was that the story in that case?
That became the story in that case. And yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of Bollywood, which is a whole different subject altogether, I have to ask you, do celebrities actually pay journalists to show up at airports and restaurants?
The photographers?
Spill the beans.
The photographer?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's not even a secret, it shouldn't even, shock anybody's socks off, because, I mean, all the paparazzi in India is invited. Yeah, is invited. Yeah, they're pre-informed, and they are paid a very substantial amount.
Wow.
Just to publish their pictures. And, honestly, I think it's not a bad idea at all, simply because, the media companies pay them so little per photograph. I think it's about 200 rupees or 500 rupees a photograph tops. And any celebrity will give them anywhere between 2,000 to 10,000 rupees just to post it on their own social media, or get it, printed in the paper. And, it's a question of livelihood. It's win-win for the movie star as well as, the photojournalist, and good on them.
Wow. Well, I was obviously attracting all the wrong kind of celebrities at the table because we rarely had suspicious photographers looming
Oh, I knew
outside.
about it. I knew about it before you did. Was it Michael Douglas and Catherine
Yes.
Zeta-Jones? And I
Yes.
remember messaged you and I sat there at your table and you were in your
Yeah.
office right above and you had no idea, right?
Yeah, I know. And then I was like, what? I'm going running there. And and then I
No,
sheepishly hung
no,
around behind one of
no,
the tables.
no.
Yes, I didn't even have the guts to go and talk to them. And then you kept messaging and we were like, talk to them. And I was
Yes.
like, what do I say?
Yes,
And then
I was like, just go welcome
know.
them. You're like, I don't want to invade their privacy. I don't want to make them feel awkward. You were like so shy. And I'm like, just go.
But I'm like literally the opposite of what you do, because our whole thing is to respect their privacy when they're coming out to dine. And I'm always like, no, they don't want to be disturbed. They don't want people to know that they're here. They want to have their meal peacefully. And that's something that we have to respect. And I've always
You are
believed
so
that.
naive.
I know, clearly.
That is a crock of shit. Everybody who's famous.
I genuinely
right?
find that hard to, I really can't, I can't get my head around that, because I genuinely feel like when you're coming for a meal, you don't want people coming and asking for a photo with you and for your autograph and whatever. Okay, maybe you want someone to take a picture when you're stepping out of the restaurant, but otherwise it's just, isn't it really annoying?
I mean, imagine if Amitabh Bachchan left his house and nobody knew who he was and he had to introduce himself.
No, they know who they are, but
they go counter and say, hi, I'm Amitabh Bachchan. Can I just get an upgrade or whatever? Do you think, where are you?
No, I mean, it's different if you're using it to your advantage. But when you're dining in a restaurant, surely you just want to have your meal in peace. You're there with friends or with your spouse or whoever, and don't you just want to be able to step out once in a while and not have people kind of harangue you? I have to say, at the restaurant, it doesn't tend to happen. One time it did and people went nuts was when Rahul Dravid came, and I was just like, what is going on here? But literally, even people I wouldn't expect to go and ask for a photograph did. So who knew, right? It is...
So let's say I'm Catherine Zeta-Jones, all right? Let's say I'm in this far-flung foreign country where I don't even know if anyone's watched my films and seen me pout and crawl on the floor and be sexy. Or, perform burlesque on an Oscar-winning movie. I'm just, here with my husband, who people may recognize or may not.
Oh, come on. Everyone recognizes them.
Yeah, so that's my point, right? Imagine what I'm feeling. Of course, nobody, if you're having a meal, you want to finish the conversation. You don't want to be hounded. But, if the restaurant owner politely comes over and says, I hope you're having fun. Can I send you over one glass of wine? That's just good manners.
Fair enough.
I'm so glad I twisted your arm into going and saying,
I know. I am too. It was one of the highlights of my career as a restaurateur. But, I have to, coming back to the paper, it really is an art to be able to manage to break news in the print medium today. Let's be honest, considering this whole world of instant digital news that we live in, this digital era that we're now getting all our news from. So how do you still manage to do that while working with a print publication? And you continue to do that, of course, but how do you do that? How do you work against the digital, or not against, but how, manage to break news in a digital era?
That is such a good question. And it's actually a massive compliment. So thank you.
No, but it's true. It really, it never felt redundant reading the paper. And I can't put my finger on it because, I was just a consumer of it. But it is something, I'm seeing that less and less now. I don't feel, of course, for editorial content, it's a whole different thing. But I don't feel the need to get my news from the newspaper anymore. And
so, I really cannot take credit again for the diary page in Mumbai Mirror, because it really did do a good job. We had a spectacular team, and each person in that office had a spectacular phone book. So, a journalist doesn't necessarily have to write well, but they really are paid for who's on their phone book. But mostly, Gauri, I have to give credit to Meenal Bagel, my editor, because she had while we were in the newsroom, guts of steel, and she didn't meet anybody. It was tough for like even the biggest industrialists to get her on the phone or try and get a meeting with her, and their PR teams would beg.
Hound her.
Yeah, like they would just beg for 10 minutes with her, and it wouldn't happen. So she also had that sort of wall around her, and she was like Batman in a Batcave, and we just went around doing our job. And the thing is that when you have a great editor who pretty much has your back, and even if you've got blood on your shirt, she's going to think you're innocent, and really sort of backs you completely. Plus, it's also the platform that the Times gives you, right? I mean, they have a floor of lawyers, right? So if you bungle up, and of course we almost never bungled up, but we did invite a lot of defamation notices. I mean, they deal with that sort of stuff. So I don't think it's really me. I just think it's a commitment of the editor as well as the organization to pull out a product that can be pulled out if that sort of support structure exists, for a journalist. Like, I mean, since Mirror shut down, 2 other newspapers said, look, bring this diary to us, and it doesn't work, right? Like, and I explained to them, I said, look, I mean, I can say I can do it and, attempt to do it, but, you have to meet your end of the bargain, and this is what it involves. And are you going to back me up? Do you have, do I have that legal sort of infrastructure? Are you going to, make sure that if your friends call you and say, it's not going to make you sweat, So it was a combination of everything. But digital news is a beast, like it's so hard to compete with like the immediacy of it. And I know that they tried very hard to make newspapers redundant, but we just had to work harder and make sure that we delivered, right?
But what is going on in the world of like journalism and media today? Because of course, in spite of everything, we were all like very disheartened when, as a consumer as well as a reader rather, when the Mirror announced that it was closing. And, more recently, we've been reading about like the global restructuring at Condé Nast, and, which has resulted in various editors possibly moving on. So what is going on in the world of journalism and media? I mean, what's this churn leading to?
Well, the churn exists because the churn exists in the people who advertise, right? It's really an economic sort of a crisis that is causing trouble for every company that depends on other companies to make money, right? Especially media and journalism. So Mirror sort of shut down or announced it was a daily and just kept 2 reporters. And, Condé Nast calls it restructuring, but of course it's a massive, downsizing. It's a massive overhaul. I'm a bit ambivalent on the relevance of print media. I'm not so sure that it is the dinosaur that those who do digital media only make it out to be. People still love to read newspapers, right? You get, your most credible source of news is still, a newspaper, and increasingly not even television. It takes 24 hours to bring out. So, and there are multiple heads that go into every story. It may just have one byline, but there are multiple heads that go into even like a 3-paragraph story. It's the reporter, it's the editor, it's fact check, the desk person, the layer. I mean, it's at least 5 people that look into 3 paragraphs, right? So that sort of solidity, and vigilance comes, only, you can't have it in digital, they just want it like out right now, and they want it like first, and, it's clickbaity and assortment of things. And we also need to understand, Gauri, that in India, the money that is to be made in journalism, in media, is still in print. Like even the legacy newspapers burn their profits in their digital enterprises. I mean, they may have massive numbers and they may see, an uptick of those numbers growing, but, growth is not just it's just not a numbers game, right? It also is assessed by what sort of revenue you bring in, right? I mean, I'm okay to just have to sell 100 cups of tea every day if it's going to make me money. But what's the point of selling more and more cups of tea? And I still haven't figured out, how to, live
Be
off
profitable.
that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a little ambiguous with it, but yeah, of course, heads have rolled, mine included. Major newspapers have shut down, especially Mirror, because it was massively circulated. It was a huge, huge success editorially, very popular. People wanted to read it. But, newspapers fail or, companies fail, companies in the media fail when, the economy sort of flails, right? So we couldn't, I suppose, like the owners couldn't figure out how to support the very expensive production of a newspaper that, post-COVID, like the week we shut down, the week that Mirror announced that it was closing down or just doing a weekend slim edition or whatever, that week my print run was 352,000, which is massive. I mean, you can't say irrelevant to 352,000 during a pandemic. And before COVID, it was, 5.5 lakhs, right? So, I mean, I really cannot, from this position, say that people are not reading newspapers or don't want to read newspapers. They definitely do. But maybe it was the business model that was faulty. Maybe it wasn't positioned, the way it should have been positioned.
It's every business. I mean, was affected by what happened, including
But
ours.
also in India, we need to understand how and why the newspaper business is problematic, right? We sell a product that costs 25 or 35 rupees for 5 rupees and 8 rupees. You're totally dependent on an external form of revenue. Then you're not following a subscription.
Right. So when that stops, then obviously it's not viable.
We have the cheapest newspapers in the world. Yeah. I mean, the Dawn in Pakistan, it costs 25 rupees daily, like in Sri Lanka, like, I don't know if it's Ceylon Times or the Sunday Times, that's 70 rupees a day for a newspaper, So, I mean, there are multiple factors at work, and I hope that, in a healthier economy, ideally print, digital, magazines, there should be enough competition, healthy competition. There should be room for everybody.
Yeah. And you had, other than your claim to fame, which is diary, you actually have another, another feather in your cap, which is your fantastic column on fashion. And of course, that's now moved into a digital space. How does that work for you? You had a column in print, which is now in digital behind a paywall. Does that sort of affect how you write? And does that sort of bother you in any way?
It massively bothers my self-esteem. When you're in like a leading paper with your photograph, like for everyone to see, and you wake up and like by 8 a.m. you have like anywhere between
barrage
12
of messages.
Yeah, you have like a dozen messages, and I like the sentence, oh, did you really think so? Or whatever, I mean, paywalls are hard to digest, but they're really important because I think that's really how we are going to be consuming news. It seems to be going in that direction, and I really don't believe news shouldn't come free. I don't think you should pay, 5 rupees, a day for it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to pay for news so people can pay for salaries, so you get a good quality journalist. And, if you want to pay peanuts, you'll get monkeys, right? Yeah. And I do see some sort of transition where everyone's going into a paywall, and the New York Times has done it very successfully. And of course, other companies which are very niche, like The Economist or the Business.
No, and we're hearing it all over the world. I mean, in Australia as well, there's where Facebook can't just sort of print or sort of show news. It has to be, there's a lot of regulation coming in as well. And I think you're right. It's now media companies realizing that they have to sort of be self-sufficient in a way. And
so what's happening in Australia is also happening in India, right? It's that sort of Google tax that, Facebook and Amazon and like the bigger companies are avoiding. And, I think they have to pay a certain percentage to the country where they make their money from. But just because they're headquartered elsewhere, they seem to avoid that sort of tax. And the thing is, I hope that it works out, especially, in service-oriented companies like ours, um, newly industrialized sort of economies, because it can really be a game changer, for India.
So, I mean, coming back to your column, as someone who doesn't follow fashion trends, as you can see, and stories very closely, even I love reading your column every Tuesday, and because it was so relatable to everyday life, to my everyday life, and whether you were talking about Birkins or fashion trends on Netflix shows or whatever, it was something that made it had mass appeal. How did you get onto this beat?
Rather unwillingly, actually. So I came into journalism only because I had a degree in English literature and I did very well at university, and I didn't know what to do with an English degree. So it was either journalism or maybe be a librarian.
Teaching.
Teaching.
I'd love to see you as a librarian, Namrata.
My God.
I would pay full annual subscription to your library if you were a librarian.
Can I confess? It's my dream job. All right. Like it's, just to be in a massive room surrounded by, floor to ceiling books, shushing people all day long,
whipping your whip,
controlling what they read, telling them what they can't read. Oh, it's just not available. Oh, somebody's going to borrow that. But oh my God, the control freak in me would freak out. I would love that. Yeah. No,
but instead, alas, that didn't happen.
Well, women are just taught to kind of sort of go with the flow. And then, so journalism happened. I joined Behram Contractors Afternoon, and I told him I wanted to be a journalist. And I think just because I was a girl and just because, I grew up in South Bombay, he put me on what is called like the party beat, which is where all the fashion shows happen, because even as recently as 20 years ago, fashion shows were like, events sponsored by like alcohol companies, and like everyone dressed up and went to, and it was like this massive party. But, I really began to enjoy it. And I began to meet designers and understand their craft and their design journeys. And I really, had my teeth sunk into it. And I think just, enjoying writing, enjoying history, enjoying philosophy, analysis came very easy to me. So, I mean, my fashion column is like 19 years old out of my 20 years in journalism. And, week after week, it's, some weeks are hard. Most of the times it's easy. And the thing is, people say that, it's fashion, it's so small, it's a little bubble and it's frivolous and, is there enough to write about? I'm like, we all wear clothes every day, right? Like, it touches us every day. It concerns us every day. At least I hope, we spend 5 minutes just trying to pair a shirt with trousers, and, sometimes we may change that. But even if it's just work from home, I mean, nothing is like a chronicler of history, like other than what you put on, right? Like, yeah, so it kept me going.
No, I mean, I absolutely. But I mean, look at, it is something, you can't live without clothes, just like we say you can't, our industries banking on the fact that you can't live without food, and at some point it will revive. But the fashion industry is going through incredibly challenging time right now, and what's your sort of view on this? Is it actually, or is it just that what we think of as fashion, which is this luxurious sort of discretionary spend item, is actually, it's just shifting focus to something that's the need of the hour, whether it's more casual, at home kind of?
No, I don't. I mean, it definitely is.
I mean, it hasn't stopped, right? I mean, what's actually happening?
Yeah, so it's definitely seen a massive transition, right? Like has everything else, because of this crazy outbreak that's been going on, right? Like the restaurants that don't have cloud kitchens, or
they're struggling.
They're struggling. Films have transitioned to Netflix and Amazon and what have you. So the luxury business has also had to make a jump into e-commerce much before. You've got to keep your head above water and make it sort of work.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And the sort of, we're seeing a lot of deals happening in this space. And yeah, I think it's just about pivoting for survival, at the moment. But,
Yeah, but Indian fashion is in a very unique space. Like in 20 years, I could not compare it to what happens in Europe or what happens in America or even what happens in China, because all these countries have their own trajectory, and I feel in India also, like, designers want to ape, like, sell them labels to a big conglomerate and have their department stores or venture into perfume and handbags. And they've all been sort of failed experiments because, the most amazing thing about the clothing industry in India is that it is still about the clothes, right? It's not developed into that whole department store model where you're just a brand name that dresses maybe, movie stars, at the Oscars or the Golden Globes. You actually make money selling off clothes, and you make a lot of money, right? Like some designers, like their homes and their rolling farmhouses. So, I mean, I'm really impressed with how the industry in India has shaped up. I don't think they get it themselves, because they often feel like, they struggle or this hasn't happened and that hasn't happened. But, it's a very sophisticated space. It's greatly dependent on its crafts. So it's a wonderful, wonderful example of how slow fashion can exist and thrive. It's also a great place where you can buy as close to the source as possible, whether you're buying, from a designer or you're going to
the weavers or the
I mean, not just the weavers, so many people have their own tailors, right? Like, so that sort of, artisanal, handmade stuff that really, Europe gets a kick out of. I mean, we still own that space, right? It's not something exotic or aspirational or, new to us. Our Kolhapuri chappals are handmade. They cost as little as, like, I don't know, 500, 800 rupees, and they can also be customized and all of that. So India is just gorgeous, rich, it's thriving where fashion and the arts is concerned, and I think we just need to focus and develop that and sustain that constantly. If designers who have been able to do that are doing very well, and some are, still trying to go back to their glory days of the 1980s. I mean, some are lost, but it's a great space. It's crowded. It's filled with a variety of ideas, a variety of business styles, and I'm very excited by it, always.
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think the way you're sort of talking about it, it's you're absolutely right that heritage isn't going to disappear because of COVID, hopefully. And actually, you've done a lot in this space because your association with fashion has gone well beyond just writing about it. You've done so much CSR work around it with, lending your voice to the Chamar Foundation and more recently launching Baradri with Kareena Kapoor. By the way, how did you get her on board? And of course, just tell us more about these and, why it's so important to you to do this.
I just think that, us sitting at home last year, COVID, we had so many different people reacted so differently to the pandemic, right? Like I was thrilled to be able to work from home. I'm a single mom. I would rush to office and then rush to pick up my son. And then, the kind of job I had was pretty much a 12-hour a day sort of a job. So I was always on the phone. So, COVID sort of slowed my routine down. I had, I was relaxed. And then we saw,
You didn't have the diary to deal with on the bright side.
Of course I did. I mean, diary existed till December, right? So we're talking about March last year, March 2020. And then, we just saw the migrants come out on the streets, walk home. There was a story of a woman who gave birth on the highway and probably rested for an hour or so and then picked up the baby and continued to walk. And I mean, it was so disturbing. I really hope that we don't forget how poor, we really are. And we don't get to see that because we may get a little data, but we don't really get a lot of data. We don't get to hear stories of the hunger crisis in India, right? And there's a massive hunger crisis. We don't get to hear stories of how poor we really are, all that, the government will celebrate is the growing GDP, how many billionaires we mysteriously seem to be adding year after year, stock market and all your blue chip companies are rising. But we don't add the numbers of how many people continue to live in, chronic poverty. They can't seem to get out of that cycle. And it's not even a number that's being reduced. It's actually being increased year after year. And Gauri, since 2017, we have not received any data from the government of India on what the poverty, who's below the poverty line. And that index keeps changing, right? So earlier it was like under $2 a day. Then they made it like, and this is families under $2 a day, right? Not a person. And then they made it, a family that can spend about 1,000 rupees a month, and, just confusing, convoluted sort of ways of judging what poverty really means. And it's been magnified because of the pandemic the world over, but especially in India, because 60% of the world's poor lives in India, right? So about 800 million people out of 1.3 billion Indians, I suppose that's our number today, live in chronic poverty, right? They go to bed with maybe not even a meal a day. That's a very difficult reality to live with. I mean, that is a number we should all be telling ourselves, regardless of what field we're in, that, this is who we really are. These are our citizens as well, right? Like, what are we doing for them? What is the government doing for them? Why have we not able to get ourselves out of this quagmire, like 73, 74 years out of independence? So that to me was very, very disturbing. And it's also how we conduct businesses, right? Like, I can speak for fashion because, we use our weavers, we use embroiderers. I mean, they're labor. They're not artisans, right? We employ them, we pay them whatever the minimal wage is. And, they equal in sort of a partnership with the designer. A designer doesn't sit on the loom and weave the cloth. He doesn't embroider his beautiful works. He just draws, right? So basically, like the whole conversation of Baradri was, economic equality. Like, fashion should speak of a partnership where the designer brings in his network and the weaver / embroiderer brings in his hand skills. And one cannot survive without the other. It is absolutely an equal partnership. But why is the take home not equal, right? Like, what is separating that? It's just where they're born, right? And that's something I want to discuss also in fashion, but, across all businesses in India, how are you paying your back end? Who does all your work? Why are we keeping the poor? Just because it helps us get rich, right? And I mean, really, Baradri was the idea behind it was to have that conversation with as many people as we could, which is why I sort of just messaged Karina and I said, look, nobody's going to listen to, a journalist, and I need your help to sort of amplify this because, Bollywood is the greatest influencer and, if you want to make some noise, you've got to have a movie star. So, yeah, she was fantastic. In 20 minutes, she said, babe, I'm in. And she was, not just being able to use her name and her doing 3 or 4 interviews, she was so hands-on with, she chose the name Baradri. She was so hands-on with who are the weavers, what is it? She was completely as hands-on as she could be because, there was a lockdown. She was involved through the process right from, get-go. And this year we're doing it again. And of course, she's doing it with us. And she's already hounded me with questions. What's the plan? Kareena Kapoor wants to ask me, what's the plan? Yeah, so she's been terrific. And she's been a great ambassador, so to speak, and a real partner in this, for sure.
No, that's amazing. You're absolutely right about this, that I think it's a form of control to not let, even though these people, you can't live without them, your business can't flourish or can't exist actually without, the artisans. And even in the restaurant business, there's a huge, it's talking about the people who are actually working in your kitchens, not just the sort of celebrity chefs or restaurateurs, and, how you kind of give them sort of ownership of what they're doing and make them equal partners, really. Or make them partners as opposed to treat them like, employees, like dispensable employees. And I think that's a conversation that even we keep having internally as to, we're constantly thinking about it, because you literally, you have to recognize that your business doesn't exist without them. But, on a lighter note, I have to ask you, you've become this night owl who's on Clubhouse every night. What are you talking about on it?
Clubhouse is so much fun. I'm new on it. I mean, India's new on it. It's just been around for 2 years.
Everyone's new on it. It's just launched.
No, I mean, it launched in the US last year, so they've already got their few thousand or million sort of followers. I love the idea of it because it's like a podcast. It sort of calms you down. It doesn't have that visual assault that Instagram does. Instagram is so look at me, and those reels are they make my skin crawl. Everyone's just trying to be like stupider than the other person, and however the stupidest person gets the maximum views.
But what are you talking about?
I'm just revealing what a dinosaur I am. What am I talking about? So I've started, one of them is a newsroom. It's still coming together where, I'm just going to start interviewing people. Somebody has a book launch, somebody has, a new film out, stuff like that. The other is, a fashion room that we do every Saturday night. And it's just fun, just a bunch of us get together. We discuss and dissect the news of the week. Like, for example, Kangana has just been sort of cancel cultured by
fallen off the face of the earth, basically. Cancelled off the face of the earth.
2 young designers have deleted all her images that they refuse to work with her again, and that's very brave of them because the clout that an A-list actor like Kangana brings to you, it can change your career, right? It can really make such a big difference. So of course they're enormously talented, and it's taken real courage for them to say that, and I'm very supportive. So, one of the rooms was that. But Clubhouse is fun,
are you doing this regularly? Can people find you on it at a certain time every day? Or is there the name of a show or something that people can look up? Or just follow Namrata Zakaria on Clubhouse, I guess?
Well, you're obviously a Clubhouse virgin.
No, we've done one. In fact, it was about podcasting and, how sort of Clubhouse is going to, why we plot podcasts. And it was interesting to do it on Clubhouse, which is...
Yeah, it's a very simple platform. You just follow people you want to follow.
Yeah.
And then, when they're in in a room, you sort of get a notification, and you also get to choose topics that you like art, culture, entertainment, world politics, global affairs, whatever.
No, it's fun. It's a fun medium.
It's fun, and it's amazing networking because it's so intimate, right? The rooms can be like 5-7 people. They can be like 200 people, and anyone can speak to anyone. And
I guess it's democratizing audio content to a large extent.
It does get a little silly, a little chaotic, but the ones that work very well. It's great fun, and it's also sort of calming, right? Like it's only audio, right? Like I'm such a podcast addict. It just calms me down. I can do other things, and I'm listening and I'm learning. So I really enjoy that.
Amazing. Okay, so we've come to the last segment of our show, and I'm going to take a quick break before we come to these fun rapid fire questions.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Cred, PayPal, and Siet. Thank you. We really do appreciate the support. So this week on Cyrus Says was great. We had Meghna joining us on Cock and Bull, Tanveer Taj and Priyanka Jena talking about pets. Huma Qureshi talks about her new television show and her life in Bollywood. And to celebrate 700 episodes on Cyrus Says, we had a number of his previous producers come on board and reminisce. Tune into This Round Is On Me, where Gauri Devidayal was joined by Samir Sheth and Yash Panage. These are the guys who started Bombay Canteen, O Pedro, and a number of other restaurants. Really great conversation they had with Gauri. On The Habit Coach, Ashton Doctor tells us about nourishing creativity and the importance of losing and some micro habits to counter overthinking. On their 75th episode, Ritasha and Rayushi talk to Naveen Richards. On The Note with Monica Nayat, she speaks with Komal Nahata to talk about the business of Bollywood, lockdown losses, piracy issues, and experiments being done to keep it going. On Advertising is Dead, Varun is joined by Guru Bhatt, VP of Customer Success Platform for PayPal India, to talk about how the digital money landscape and the fintech ecosystem has fundamentally altered the world. We also have Thalerate, our Kannada podcast. Hosts Ganesh and Pawan discuss video games, and Sivakamyam Sabatam, the Tamil show where Kavita Jiva sheds light in another story about the bravery and excellence in the governance of the Pallava dynasty. And with that, let's get you back to your show.
We are back with Namrata Zakaria, and in the last segment of our show, which is the fun rapid fire round. So, Nam, you have to say the first thing that comes to your mind.
I'll try.
Favorite comfort food?
Rajma chawal.
Really?
Oh, I'm a Punjabi
Wow.
girl.
I didn't see you as a Rajma chawal girl.
Oh my God, I'm a proud Punjabi girl.
Okay, one celebrity you would love to meet.
Ranveer Singh. I mean, I have met him, but I'd love to spend more time with him.
You can have tea with him like you did with Rahul Gandhi, huh?
Oh, stop.
One designer whose clothes you would kill to have in your closet. An Indian designer, let's throw. Or do you want to keep it open?
I mean, I have everybody's clothes that I want to have. And
Show off.
we all get press samples, right? So it's hardly like showing off. But I mean, I really can't pick a favorite, and it's not fair because I like different designers for different things,
God. See, this is why you would lose on Karan Johar's show. And this is why you won't be getting a hamper.
Ajay Devgan got an Audi on Karan Johar's show.
What?
Yeah, he won. You don't know.
Yeah, I'll send you a dinky car tomorrow. That's what you're getting. You get a dinky Audi. And you can say, I got an Audi on Gauri's show.
Okay, so let me tell you whose clothes I'm totally crushing on right now is this label called 1111.
I love them. Yeah.
Yeah, they do these beautiful, gossamer soft, like everything is handmade, cotton, their buttons are handmade, like drawstring is handmade. So I'm wearing a lot of pantsuits and tunic and trousers from them. And I absolutely love everything they do.
Favorite book you've read recently?
So I've read a lot of translations for some reason in the last year. And the one that stayed with me, I really enormously enjoyed it, was, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, it's called Gachar Gochar. It's a Kannada author and it's a translation. So the author is Vivek Shanbag, and it's a little novella, and it appeared on New York Times like best books of the year. It's fantastic. It's one of the best books I've read, out of India for sure. I mean, it's just this little nouveau riche family and this young boy a young Indian man who doesn't really go to work because he doesn't need to. And, his girlfriend is too feminist for him. So he has an arranged marriage, and his wife refuses to accept his like complete ineptitude and like lack of motivation. And it's just a little story, but it's India in a nutshell,
Lovely. And of course, on a side note, we're waiting for your book to launch on Wendell and Wendell Rodrigues, who's a fashion designer, of course, the late Wendell Rodrigues.
So Wendell has this museum coming up. Unfortunately, he passed away just before it could open, and then COVID struck. But his lifelong dream was to open a museum on the costume history of Goa. And that, I think, opens at the end of the year. And the book is part of the museum. It's the museum's official book, so to speak. It's fantastic. It's like nothing India has seen before. It has a whole history of Goa, like from the Parsis to the Devednya Brahmins, to the Sultans, to everybody, even before the Portuguese came. And it's fantastic. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we can't wait to get our hands on that. So before I let you go, one piece of advice to budding journalists.
Oh, that's easy. Read. You cannot write unless you read. Be very honest to yourself. Be honest to your reader. And if things don't fall into place, quit.
Amazing. Thank you, Namrata. That was really fun, and it was great getting into your brains about all things celebrity and, of course, all things fashion. And your passion for fashion is so apparent, and it's amazing what you're doing. And keep it up. And we'll tune in to Clubhouse tonight to find you there.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I can't wait to see you.
Thank you. Well, that conversation just made me miss Mumbai Mirror even more. It wasn't just a tabloid. It was the paper that I couldn't start my day without, and Namrata, Meenal, and the team had so much to do with that. I hope you enjoyed getting into the head of one of the city's best celebrity journalists and fashion columnists. I hope you enjoyed tuning in today. Do catch the earlier episodes when you get a chance, and more importantly, I would love to hear from you with your thoughts on the show. You can find me on Instagram at Gauri Devidayal or on Twitter at Gauri Details or LinkedIn. Either way, sit back and relax because this round is on me.
From uncensored and unfiltered chats with the who's who of the entertainment industry, I, Siddharth Kannan, bring you a very hardcore chat show called Candid Kannan. Tune in every Friday on the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Whether you're an established sports person or a budding one or simply a sports enthusiast, join us, Tanvi and Shlok.
We are two passionate pro badminton players talking policy, mindset and everything sport.
So tune in to The Millennial Athlete every Monday.
Only on the IVM Podcast Network.
Trust us, it's gonna be lit.